good friend and a colleague. She's got that warrior mentality, that warrior spirit. A strong woman who not only is going through blood cancer, but is determined to give back. And we serve together on the Patient Family Advisory Council at City of Hope. And I've actually is the one that interviewed me when I first came on years ago. And I've got to tell you, I admire her passion, and I admire her abilities to speak and get other people fired up. So with that said, Patrice, Traylor, I'm going to turn this moment over to you, and I thank you very much for coming out and sharing your time and your story with us.
Thank you. Good morning, LA Cycling Team.
Morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm not bashful. I'm going to ask you to please continue to circle around because I do have to stay out of the direct sunlight. Don't be bashful. Let's get it going. I am just thrilled to be here with each and every one of you this morning. Brett is my partner in crime, as he stated, on the Patient and Family Advisory Council for the City of Hope. I just admire each and every one of you. I want to thank you for just all that you do for folks like myself. I tried to blend in, and I'm not sure I'm successful. I do have purple. And I have glasses on because I'm still waking up. So just life before the transplant. I was 37, and life was moving along just great. My son was about 6 at the time. I had a full throttle career going with the city of Pasadena as a city planner. I like to think of myself as a planning zealot, working with, we'll call them enthusiastic residents in Northwest Pasadena. I am very proud of the legacy that I've left with Pasadena in general, and certainly Northwest Pasadena. And I retired in 2012. That happens to coincide with the date that I had my bone marrow transplant. I didn't retire because of that, but I did want to have another life after suffering at times at the hands of bureaucracy. Many of you know what I'm talking about. Now to my story. My story begins in 1995, November of 1995. I remember stepping out of the shower, and the lighting was really perfect for this moment. I think I was really led to all the experiences I had subsequently. The light hit me at just the right angle on this side of my breast, and it was a pea size, not a bump, it was a spot, and it was sage in color. And I looked and I said, I don't remember noticing that before. So I said, I'll just get it checked out. That's the way I am. The minute I see something that's out of place, I go have it checked out. So I called Kaiser. They saw me the next day. The doctor saw me the next day. And he examined it. He measured it. He said, I don't think there's anything to be alarmed about. I'm going to have you come back in 2 weeks. So I came back in 2 weeks. And he wanted to see if it changed in size or anything along those lines. It was still the same. He said, do you want to have it biopsy? And I said, of course. Now this is right before, the day before Thanksgiving. I got a call the day after Thanksgiving. Call me crazy. I knew that it was not breast cancer, but I knew it was something. So this is the beginning of what I'll call my fog state. A wonderful doctor greeted me in my patient room, and he smiled, and I just was waiting for that moment, and he said, do you know why you're here? And I said, I know something's up. And he said, you have 4th stage, low grade of chronic lymphocytic lymphoma. Now I had kind of heard about lymphoma, I knew about leukemia. I just remember just sort of blacking out with everything else that he said. And he proceeded to tell me I needed to come back and have a bone marrow biopsy, followed by I needed to identify someone in my family who could be a match. So this is a lot to take in. So I went into research mode. I went on the computer, and all I saw were just, it seems like death notices. I remember reading that this particular disease usually found its way into our senior community, and I said, well, how could that be? I'm just 37. And then I read that the survival rate was 5 years and a 50% chance of death. So I said, okay, I need to shut all this down. I started to recognize that I needed to talk to someone. So I found this wonderful, wonderful psychologist, Carol Hernandez. I've never forgotten her. She taught me the importance of meditation, mindfulness. She taught me when you journal in a situation like this to journal in one book for good thoughts and experiences, and the other journal for bad thoughts. I just need a little swig here. Thank you, Brad. I remember just going right into positivity mode. It took me 2.5 years to get comfortable with the word cancer. And I remember just sort of watching myself on film and just realizing I've seen this happen to other people. The ironic thing, though, is 2 to 3 years before, I was trying to do something beneficial, more beneficial at my lunchtime. So I said, well, I'll just come up with a number of field trips, and one was to a used bookstore on Lake. And I came across a book I've always wanted to read. It's Always Something by Gilda Radner. Anyone read that book? And when I read that book, I just was ferociously in a trance with what she went through. Little did I know that that book prepared me for what would happen 2 to 3 years later. I remember telling my mother, and we don't have cancer, it doesn't run in our family. And my mother, God bless her, she's wonderful. She turned 94 this past week. Could you please give her a applause? So I said, okay, I need to have a second opinion. I believe in second opinions, just to dot the I's and cross the T's. So I had my second opinion at UCLA Medical Center, and I was in the company of a wonderful doctor who happened to be in residency and went to the same medical school as my oncologist. So that was good news, and as good as she was, the consultation was about three hours. It just went all over my head. I was trying to take notes. I had my mother come. I needed another pair of ears. So at least I knew that I needed to start to think about how I was going to put one foot in front of the other and keep it going. I did everything. I did Qigong. I prayed. Anything that would help me to keep moving forward. Now, many of you know a bone marrow transplant is sort of a chess game. At least in my case, you can't do it too soon. You cannot do it too late. I was told that along the way that I would probably not have to worry in terms of having the transplant until I was 55. So unlike other patients, I did not have to all of a sudden just totally freak out that I was going to have a bone marrow transplant next month. I had almost 20 years to get used to the idea, the notion that I was going to go through a bone marrow transplant. I don't know why I said this. When I was asked who I wanted to have tested, it was my youngest brother. He and I are 19 months apart. We are not twins by any stretch of the imagination, but we are twins on paper. Our antigen report, identical numbers across the board. So I couldn't be any more thrilled. I told him, please do not lead a wild life. I need you to be healthy. And the interesting thing is, my brother is, he's wonderful in a lot of ways, but when he's scared of something, he talks like this. But the minute he understands that something is going to affect him, he becomes like a church mouse. And I remember him coming in, just sort of looking around at everything, and I said, okay, I'm going to just spoon feed him along the way. So my doctors told me I didn't have to worry about also a treatment right away. They just wanted to monitor me. I came in and had my T cells checked, my vitals checked, and this went on for quite a while. And then I became symptomatic. I had swollen lymph glands. I sort of looked like a fullback, you know, on a football team. And I said, well, this is very interesting. It didn't hurt. And that's the point I do want to stress. At no time during my ordeal was I in pain. I was in pain when I got the shingles. And I'm here to tell you, I made it through what I call now my second birthday with the shingles. And if anyone wants to dial back or diminish the shingles experience, they are sorely mistaken. The transplant was a walk in the park compared to shingles. I do feel that God doesn't put anything more on your shoulders. I was saying, do I have to go through yet another experience? I mean, what is really going on? But I figured out that I was going to be a poster child. I was going to do the best I could to try to be an example, certainly for my son. My son, at the time of the transplant, was attending Alvin Ailey Performing Arts School in New York City. He's an international dancer. And I on purpose didn't tell him too much about what I was going through because I wanted him to focus on his chosen discipline. So as the time neared, I ended up having to go through a couple of treatments. I remember telling my supervisor, and I was very matter of fact about it, and I knew that I'd be able to work most of the day, and then in the afternoon I'd have to take off. So I would either read a book or take a nap, that sort of thing. But she just was, she was speechless. And I went through months of treatment, twice a week on Rituxan. Anybody remember Rituxan? And it wasn't that bad. I didn't have any side effects. I remember my hair grew, and I remember I was under an IV when this happened. I remember a gentleman came in pushing gurneys, and he was starring in a play, and he was passing out play cards. And he started talking to me, and I realized, is this guy really asking me out? Really? Here I am getting treatment, and I said, well, this is one of the lighter moments, and I said, well, this is very interesting. So these experiences started to calm me down. And I remember looking around in the treatment room, seeing a lot of people, seeing a lot of stories. My story paled in comparison. So by the time I was admitted for my transplant, I had the worst treatment of all treatments. My doctor told me that it was going to be unforgiving, and it was. But I chose to work. It wasn't that I needed to worry about it or anything. I just felt like I'm not sure about my time, and I wanted to continue as a warrior, quite frankly. I remember it was like putting one foot in front of the other. I remember having cotton ball. I remember when I got too weak, I would take a nap downstairs or go to my mother's and take a nap. So finally, here I am in the city of Hope. I remember it was feeling sort of businesslike. I had toured the city of Hope a year in advance to make sure that I was comfortable with my new home. I did ask to see what the rooms looked like because I started to tell my own story by this so that I wouldn't feel like I was in the hospital too long. I decided I wasn't going to wear a hospital gown. You can see I'm a little bit of a fashionista. I'm not embarrassed.
Love it. Love it.
Thank you. As you know, you can't have real plants. So I brought my silk plants in. It was a beautiful room. I remember that. It had beautiful panoramic-sized windows, a view of the San Gabriel Valley. And I said, I'm going to make this really light and easy and airy for anyone who comes in. I had my jazz. I had what is it? The tube that you turn upside down with the sand. What is that called?
Hourglass.
Hourglass. I had my hourglass with a bright color, the Lakers colors, yellow and purple. Thank you. So I went into just getting ready for this transplant. My vitals being checked, and it was pretty light in the beginning. As I said, I tolerated a lot of the treatments really, really well. By the time I was getting ready for the actual transplant, my father's passed 50 years ago, but I'm very close to his brother, and my uncle called at the time of the transplant. They told me I was going to have cells delivered in what looked like a hefty bag. So big. They tied the cells to my IV, and I prayed with my uncle for a few minutes. And I realized, I said, this is like a wedding. You have your beginning preparation for the wedding. The wedding is actually the bone marrow transplant, which is 40 minutes for me. And then you have the recovery, which is the honeymoon. So right now I have 2 birthdays. February 8th, which is next week, I'll be 63. And my second birthday is June 27th. I happen to be attending a cancer event at the City of Hope, and this lady is now our key administrative support staff. She happened to recruit me to participate on the City of Hope Patient Advisory Council. I was really starved with what am I going to do with my mind? I was so busy as a planner, I was craving what do I need to do with my intellect. And this was the perfect place for me to continue to grow. I had no problem coming through the transplant. I had a little bit of graft versus host, nothing major. I lost a lot of weight. I can't stand too much loss, but it all worked out in the wash. I had a very strong support with my family, my extended neighbors, my cousins and relatives near and far. This is going to sound a little crazy, but I'm so grateful for the experience I had overall. I met so many special people in our community as I'm meeting today here with each and every one of you. Oh, one more sip. I've come to recognize that maybe I was destined to have a bone marrow transplant. I used to feel like this is a roommate that I gotta get evicted. But I decided to embrace my experience. And it feels like I'm with an old friend now. I can't tell you how excited I am to be a poster child for those that really need a beacon of light as they move through life. And I'm sure many of you can appreciate that. I had the wonderful experience to meet Brett. And I remember thinking when I interviewed him along with 2 other fellow members on the advisory council, this guy is really a winner. And I was wondering, why do we have to have an interview process? We want to make sure that you have the passion. We want to make sure that you're going to contribute. And by the way, I do contribute annually to the Leukemia Lymphoma Society, so just want to make sure that you guys know that I'm true and blue. Brett, I don't know if there's anything else you'd like for me to cover?
I think you've covered everything.
Yay! A testimony of a marriage of over 40 years that I'm very comfortable holding a woman.
You rock it. Thanks so much. That was so great.
Similar color. I can accessorize it the best. Patrice, thank you so much.
You're
Thank you
welcome.
very much. It was great. Good to hear your story.
I hope you all got a chance to connect with Patrice. Every time we do this, I get to know someone a little bit better too. So again, thank you. Thank you for being a part of our team. We're going to have your picture on a board going forward, which we'll have next week. We'll start. And if you want someone to connect to, Patrice is obviously a very dynamic, very well-spoken woman. As beautiful inside as she is out. And thank you
Thanks very much,
for
Patrice.
joining.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Coach Brett. So we're going to move on to now our training goals. Coach Charlie is going to talk a little bit about